Hey everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Manufacturing Matters, where we talk about the technology and the trends reshaping the global manufacturing industry. My name is Win Harden. I'll be your host today. And today we're lucky enough to look at a very interesting topic. It's related to artificial intelligence, which is what we've been talking a lot about in recent months and even years. And we've got an expert in that area on cloud services that's going to help us to understand how companies can map a course forward as it as we go forward with AI model optimization and we leverage more and more of this into industrial applications. So today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Dale Hopkinson, Senior Product Manager Cloud Service at Thales. Dale, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Win. Good to see you again. Great to be on to support the community.
Wonderful. I really appreciate it. Now, Dale, we spoke not too long ago at the Automate conference, but we were doing a very short 15-minute Automate Live segment. And I'm really excited that you were able to come and join us back on the Manufacturing Matters podcast so we can have a more in-depth conversation about AI and where we're all going from here. So thanks for making time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So, Dale, before we get going, tell us a little bit about your cloud services, yourself, Thales in general, and how cloud services fits within the overall enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Thales, large company, three primarily things we do. We have security and defense and aerospace, security and enterprise and cybersecurity, which I'm representing today. Um, as part of our group, we have a team that does software monetization. So companies, especially in this space, think of like your Staubli, your Hexagon, your Siemens, as they add software and AI and they want it to be a revenue stream for their business. They need a set of modern monetization tools, and that's what we offer them. What I manage on our cloud services team, we essentially give them the ability to protect their software and AI, as well as to sort of control the business model in a very flexible way so they can change the price and packaging without calling the engineering teams. Not only for this space, but as you mentioned, for enterprise, right? This is a natural SaaS and enterprise software motion. And it's just an area now that as manufacturing puts more emphasis and growth through software defined automation, they're now learning that these set of capabilities exist. And it's an area of part of their stack that they need to invest in to scale through software.
You know, I just see this as such an important topic right now, not just within the industrial base and the manufacturing companies that we're talking about today and that I work with so much. It's across the board when it comes to artificial intelligence. We've got the initial
Yes.
frontier models that are being launched. There's a lot of discussion about how do we generate ongoing revenue to pay for the processing requirements, the overhead, and model evolution, right? And continual
Yes.
training and optimization. So it just seems critical if we're going to do like Bain has shown us recently in recent research that software is becoming more critical for industrial applications and revenue sources, and especially those that are AI focused. That we really need to be thinking long term. We can't just do a launch and forget
True.
scenario when it comes to model optimization, right? And
Very true.
somehow these OEMs, if they're going to keep bringing us new and better solutions, they've got to find a way to support that development
Yes.
work. So I think this is a critical time. So tell me, how is the role of software changing in industrial applications?
It's actually very exciting to see. I've been connected to software automation for, I don't know, years. I think I first spoke at Automate maybe over 10 years ago. Um, Software, one, it's the shift that mainly happening is one, it's being decoupled from hardware, right? So the value is moving from the metal to the code, as I like to say. And with that, software is becoming less of features and more of actually full-grown products, right? Products that's creating value in top of the environment. I know everyone is talking about AI vision and digital twins, right? But the value that's being created through software in some cases are increasing the lifetime value of the hardware. It's
Mhm.
unlocking new value through analytics and data for companies. And it's really bringing not just new value from the innovation side, but as you mentioned, and as Bain mentioned, new revenue opportunities, right? I think in within 5 years or so, Bain, they had a research study that says AI software and data is going to add about 70 billion to the market, right? So it's creating new markets
Right.
in addition to creating new value. One of the things I look at really in automation is there's a very interesting parallel between what happened years ago with software defined network when software went from buying a physical router and software from the same company, Cisco, right, to being open up to everyone. You see a lot of startups now in industrial automation, right? They have AI vision solutions. and other solutions for robots. So it's very exciting. It's creating new markets, creating new value, and really making innovate manufacturing a very innovative industry.
That and brings us something to mind, which has always been interesting to me, which is retasking. If we're talking about a server
Mm,
rack, or if we're talking about a router, the hardware doesn't significantly change. And doing SDR
right?
modifications or whatever it might be to add new functionality, it's not too much of a leap. But
Yeah.
when we can leverage, when software defines the application layer in an industrial application, are we finally going to see a situation where companies can get even more use out of an industry, an automation hardware scenario, because they can retask it, move it possibly, or just, have more flex? Is it more about flexibility in the operations for an existing work cell, or are we giving more legs to the hardware that we've got in the field or that we're putting in there now?
Well, absolutely. It's a bit of both. I mean, I've seen this in networking, automotive, as well as now manufacturing. I mean, especially now with the cost of hardware so unpredictable and the timelines of delivery, right? If you can get your hardware SKU down and have that hardware doing multiple things and retask it, as you say, right, or repackage it from the monetization perspective, that
Yeah,
becomes very advantageous. It becomes for the customer, right? Like you said, for the manufacturing floor, they can retask and they can get more done. And for the provider, you've actually now increased your land and expand, right? Once you get your physical device on the floor, you sold that, you can expand that through different use cases and through different models, right? By simply now turning new software on, new AI on through monetization. This is exactly the key point of what's happening, where I get excited because I've been doing this and solving for SaaS and enterprise software, and now to see this in manufacturing, right? I
yeah,
think one of the early indicators exactly this retasking. I forget when it happened, but maybe 5, 6 years ago, Tesla, right? They had different battery cells, right? And if you wanted the battery with the longer lifetime, you had to buy a physical battery. Now
right,
they have the same battery. They can control the power, the battery lifetime timeline through
yeah,
the subscription you pay for. They
right.
actually had one really use case a few years ago down in Florida. I forget which one of the hurricane storms came in, but for all of their customers that had the lowest, they unlocked the largest, right? So you can kind of get out of harm's way. But no, you're exactly right with that retasking ability, right? That's one of the key both growth opportunities as well as just operational capabilities on the floor.
I know that Thales has been working, as you mentioned, Siemens, maybe Schneider, others, right? Some of the
Yeah.
largest when it comes to AI deployment, industrial applications. Um, but farther downstream, I'm just curious: is it too early in this process to comment? But I would love to get your opinion on
Yeah.
one of the greatest growth areas for industrial hardware has been the small and medium enterprises
Mm,
who've been, don't always have that capex to be able to put bunches of money into new production lines, but have labor shortages, have capacity issues, need, new quality or precision capability. So, do you see this as being detriment? I mean, I guess an outsider might say, well, is this going to slow hardware sales? Or is this
mm.
actually going to open up the opportunity by giving a much better ROI argument to small and medium enterprises and possibly accelerate, those implementations,
Yeah,
hardware implementations?
from the growth perspective, this is where this concept again, it part of my excitement, right, where I follow this space is being
Yeah,
able to now sell into smaller areas that could not afford buying a physical device up front. Think of something like, they can now lease a device, or they can get different business models, whether it's a usage based or subscription terms. So
yeah,
while it does have the risk, of course, of disrupting hardware sales, the opportunities it opens now to going downstream to selling into smaller markets, different countries, right? However you define regions, etc. That
hmm,
opportunity now is much greater, right? And the cost and of setting up a pilot, a demo. So for one example, with Siemens, right? One of their challenges that they wanted to get to was a demo model, and I can share this. This is public in our website. They wanted to get to a sort of a demo version of their software. One
right.
of their challenges was they had to maintain two versions of software, which was quite cumbersome for anyone who's felt that pain. And I'm sure there's some listening that they're nodding their head and putting their head down now. They had the ability now to leveraging the concepts of monetization, get to one software, and by turning things on and off and defining their time limit or time or terms, right? they can go into markets at a very lower cost. So it lowers the customer acquisition cost, right? You don't have to necessarily get the full setup, a full engineer, teams of engineer on site and installers and integrators to do everything.
Yeah.
So this definitely has the ability to open markets, and we're seeing a number of companies with that exact motion going downstream. And again, it's something we've seen with medical years ago. I've worked with medical companies where their challenge was the small clinics, the banks didn't know how to assess the risk for a small clinic wanting to buy such a large array of X-ray devices.
Right.
So getting to the same model, right, and getting them out of that CapEx sort of challenge where they can lease the machine and you're making it up on the usage side, the subscription,
Right.
and you're really beginning to think now about the customer lifetime value and not just that one-time sale. So the risk for sure is there. Shifting with this model, decoupling the software from the
Yeah.
hardware, but the opportunity is much greater, right? Which is why Bain and others are saying that the revenue that's going to be created from AI and software and monetizing both as well as data is very large, right? And we're actually seeing that the profit pools are shifting, right? It's becoming very challenging to compete on hardware. Now there's a little a false sort of aspect in the market to compete on hardware with the war than the things that's going on. You may be able to pricing, but that's temporary, hopefully. You're really going to have to learn to compete on software and digital innovation and how you monetize that.
It's interesting to me, and obviously, we're at a pivot point, right? When we talk about
Yes.
more dependency on the software side, what will be the impacts on hardware? For
Hmm.
years, I've wondered, when will robot as a service, when will leasing become more of a thing? And when
Yeah.
you talk about bringing into new markets, I mean, we're not just talking about vertical industries in the United States and developed
Hmm.
countries, but we're also theoretically talking about to emerging markets,
Yeah.
the folks who are earlier in the adoption curve of automation technology. And I think that cost compartmentalization you're talking about, um, I can just see that being a major driver for many more entrants into the marketplace. So
Yeah.
we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on that and revisit that in a future talk when we say, okay, well, what are the real world
Yeah.
implications? How is this coming out in reality? So I look forward to reflecting back on this next year, perhaps at Automate, when we can talk
Absolutely.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quick on that, I was in Asia, Southeast Asia, a few months ago in Singapore.
Mhm.
And with these countries having access to hardware and labor cheaper, right? This is one of the topics that's coming up, right? That do they now have the ability to enter markets, global markets, right, with this same exact model? So yeah, so that's something I'm tracking, interesting about up. So yeah, definitely we put it on our list and look forward to revisit it hopefully a year from now.
You make an excellent point. When we think about the Asian and we think about the per unit cost for robotic and many automation solutions going down significantly. I mean, it's not just AI and the retasking that poses a pivot
Hmm.
point for hardware sales.
Hmm.
There's, as this becomes a mature technology, as robotic work cells and others, we would expect the per unit price to come down as global
Yes.
competition goes up. This is
Yes.
the normal market evolution. So it was ultimately unavoidable. The beauty is now, possibly by using some of the things that we're going to talk about here, that you're going to share with us about how to
Yeah.
monetize it and the path forward, that there's a way to reclaim that revenue while continuing
Yes.
to better service to your customer segment. And so I just find this all super exciting. So let's go a little bit deeper. Can you give us some advice that you would give to clients about how, okay, now you've got this AI platform, it's super powerful. How do
Yeah.
you monetize it? How do you sell that to customers and make them understand?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I'm laughing because this scenario I said a few months ago at a company, they acquired an AI platform and they said, yeah, this fits perfectly, but we have no idea how to monetize it, right? And I'm like, how much did you pay for it again? Nine figures. Like, okay, let's get started. So I think that the first thing is you in this shift, it's strategic, right? It's a strategic mindset and a strategic muscle. You have to really think of now software and AI as a core asset,
Yeah.
right? And what I mean by that is you want to have P&L leadership for the revenue that's coming out of this. Ideally for the entire portfolio. A few companies do this well. Some of the products may not fit in one clean portfolio. So
Mhm.
however you break your products down or portfolio down, you want to get P&L leadership for that. You want to have dedicated staff around that, right? So that's the first thing. that I've seen.
Gotcha.
Once companies are really strategically thinking this way, anything that happens after the monetization, the projects, the execution, this is the last thing, right? I've seen the other way where companies, they've shifted to the execution, they've had great plans, put in a great tech stack, but it just wasn't a strategic muscle or a strategic discipline. And when someone left the company, things change. So you really want to first start there and on the strategic level have P&L leadership for the software portfolio and the software revenue.
So
Well,
before we
once,
move on from that,
yeah,
yeah,
please.
I really want to hear it. I mean, what I can imagine you mentioned changing personnel in different directions. If
Yeah.
you don't have it documented, if it's not part of an organization, then it's hard to develop roadmaps and to stick to those roadmaps.
Yes.
But I'm also going to guess that there's other implications, such as to be able to easily identify revenue from these new
Oh,
activities
absolutely.
so that we can get C-suite attention. So, can you tell us a little bit more about why it's critical? I mean, you might not think that an organizational plan is such a critical component, but it is. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the specific reasons, Dale?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two ways. If you're a public company and you want to begin breaking out software revenue, recurring revenue, the analysts and your investors will appreciate that. Your stock will grow and it will go up and to the right in the good direction, right? In the midst of other challenges that you may have. So
Yeah,
that's certainly one way, right? You can prove the level of investments. You can prove the ROI easier on the internal side, the other side, right? Asking for investments. If you can show now by breaking out recurring revenue, I mean, of course, deferred revenue is the future growth of the business, the life of the business. The
right.
more you can attribute that internally, right? Asking for investments in monetization projects, in new innovation, becomes easier to prove those business cases. And of course, internally, like you said, the roadmap lives on. It's not dependent on a team or individuals, right? It's the roadmap and the growth of the business. As
Yeah,
part of my role in cloud services, I actually had the opportunity, sometimes burden and headache of pivoting our business from on-prem to SaaS, right? So going through exactly that. When we were the perpetual one-time sales with maintenance that looks very similar to manufacturing, and now shifting the business to recurring revenue, right? So that it was easier for us reporting up, right? We can show what our current investment actually really means for the
mhm,
growth of the business, the health of the business, and
yeah.
why it makes sense, right? We got additional investments, and we eventually grew and became very successful there. So those are the critical reasons you want to do it, but especially if you're a public company, being able to show ARR, annual recurring revenue, right? Wall Street and the street really likes that.
Yes,
So those are some of the key reasons you really want to break it out and decide whenever you want to do report it in your earnings. But the internal benefits are tremendous.
right on. Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick second and thank our sponsor. Manufacturing Matters is sponsored by Tech B2B Marketing. They're a full-service public relations and marketing agency that focuses on technology companies, especially in the energy and automation markets. They provide full service, media relations, investor relations, employee relations, full end-to-end content development, videos, services, animation, full IT stack development from website integrating with ERP systems, CRM, marketing automation systems, and they bring a whole lot of knowledge and experience about technical markets since they've been servicing those markets for over 30 years. So if you have any questions, you want to learn more, go to techb2b.com. And now let's get back to the show. That makes all the sense in the world. You're right. I couldn't agree more with investors loving ARR. So, I mean, you
Oh
can
yeah.
project sales growth based on what you think market adoptions are going to be, macro
Yes.
trends. ARR is kind of locked in unless there's going to be a major investment or big
Yeah.
business decision to change course. So, that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
Absolutely. And actually, there's another point there, right? I mean, if you're on a certain size of M&A acquisitions, right, that can also improve
Oh,
valuation, right, of company, right?
right.
So ARR will be valued much higher than just one-time sales.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Now, I interrupted earlier just to dive deeper into that,
No,
the
please.
importance of the organizational
Yeah.
changes, but you had some more points.
Yeah, so the second thing I would see there, really digging deeper and advising companies is once you have that level of structure, it's you have to rethink the business model, right? Now with software and AI, you mentioned a few things earlier. It's recurring. You're delivering ongoing value, right? You're updating models. You're optimizing
Yeah.
models. So there's recurring activity. You need to make sure that the business model around that does two things. It is trying to capture the recurring growth, right? The customer lifetime value, as we call it, right? You think less of the one-time sale,
Mhm.
and now how much revenue do I make over the course of contracts and renewals with a particular
Yeah.
customer? And that also helps you to deal with the economics that come in with software, the maintenance, right? So this is not just one version and the next version is coming with a new hardware. You have maintenance now. You need to have ongoing maintenance. You have bug fixes. You'll have support cases. You'll have new innovation, right? You want to make sure that's not going in the product just for free, right? Because this is where you'll get the cost and not the benefit.
Right.
So you want to rethink those business models. The business models that typically make sense, everyone starts with subscriptions.
Hmm.
When it comes to subscriptions, I've seen it two ways. Some companies take the first step where they have all of the features, all of the benefits, and it's a flat rate subscription. I think that's going away a lot more these days as companies add AI and there's so many things that's rateable. um, you want to get quickly to the point of subscription with different tiers, right? So here's where you can get to some of that, the retasking and entering new markets, as we mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
When you have a subscription with different tiers, which just means different features on and off, different usage limits and different
Yeah.
bundles, you can decide now to target different markets, target different regions, target even different verticals, right? You can even sub-segment industry. So you can get really granular on your
Yeah.
strategy. The other typical model is a usage based. Now that everyone is adding AI and usage based models, whether it's prepaid or postpaid, are becoming fairly
Mm.
acceptable. You do also want to think about this, right? What in the software can be fixed value, where you have fixed subscriptions, where the subscriptions are based on a per site, per device, or just a term,
Yeah.
versus now what's rateable, right? Where can we add an incremental value through usage that also makes sense to our customer base and the offer? The truth is that there still is perpetual, right? I know there are many groups of camp that says, perpetual is dead. It's minimizing, right? From my point of view, of course, it's going away because you have recurring value, recurring maintenance you're offering. But in this space, manufacturing, perpetual is going to be around for quite some time, but the emphasis is not there. So in rethinking those business models, you want to make sure you can manage all of those business
Hmm.
models, which leads to the ultimate point of sort of advising companies is, we kind of say you want to fix the plumbing, right? So that in managing the business models and making sure there's this level of flexibility to change, as I just
Yeah.
mentioned, it really is a concept of modern monetization, right? There are three key things you want to pay attention to: how that software license is licensed and the license is being controlled. If you're doing a usage base, how are you metering or capturing the usage, right, for billing
Yeah.
purposes? And then ultimately, how you're protecting your AI and or software, especially if it's on the edge. You want to make sure no one can compromise that, right, and manipulate that. So yes, it's really those three key things, right? It's one, making sure there's P&L
Hmm.
leadership, that you have the right team with a vision that's thinking through the business models, and making sure you have the right architecture to support those decisions, right, as they come.
Do you have any more thoughts on either industry or customer profile types or application types that may want more of a flat rate subscription model versus maybe a subscription giving you a certain amount of usage and then more if you exceed? Are there certain methods that are better for, say, small enterprises, and but others that are more attractive to the large enterprises? Any more guidance there about how they would design that?
Yeah, you know that it's a tough question because things are changing so much, right? If it was 3 years ago, I can give better guidance, but with the introduction of AI and the speed of change, right? Everyone is becoming comfortable with change. So I think that the biggest guidance here, honestly,
Yeah.
is, and we're working through. I'm working through a few projects now where the guidance is the best practice may change tomorrow, right? And to one of your points earlier, we may have a new entrant in the market that they have some economics or risk profile that allows them to have a very small
Right.
price. You now need to figure out how to compete with that, right?
Right.
So the demand of the day is being able to change in a very flexible and agile way without disrupting engineering, right? So the key becomes, how do you make sure from the monetization, the modern monetization
Yeah.
side, you have the right capabilities that allows you to change the feature tiering, change the usage limits, change the business model without requiring on engineering team. But there is a few trends, and when it comes to any kind of AI offerings that you're doing per transactions, per scanning, any kind of per metric where your value is delivered on a per X, usage is usually more aligned there.
Right.
In the enterprise side, they are okay with usage. They just don't want surprise billing. And I was both an offender and a victim of this in my product management life. With enterprise, if you do have billing or usage base, you do want to think about bundling like an enterprise license agreement, giving them access to X parts of the portfolio on a certain usage base, spelling out very clearly in the contracts what are those usage limits and making it transparent to them. And I think also with the enterprise license, allowing the customer to change what part of the product they can substitute or switch, right? Because they may not know all of the use cases up
Yeah.
front, but being able to change from one product to another during the life of their contract. I'm seeing enterprise license agreement with software becoming very advantageous, tying that to usage. But other than pure AI, and where it's like an AI agent or AI is doing something on a per X basis, hard to say now where flat rate and usage stands in. But the other trend I'm seeing though that's sort of creeping up in manufacturing as well, it's becoming very acceptable to have a hybrid pricing, right? You have both, right? So in the portfolio, the core platform is a subscription
Yeah.
tier, and then you have portions with usage, right? This is actually one of the models that I love to see, what we call multi-access pricing. Within one tier, you have multiple levers that drives upsell, right? And not only just someone needing a new device.
Is helping customers answer these types of questions, is this one of the things you do during a consultative meeting from Thales' point of view, or are there other recommendations like check out the AI4 conference series or anything else where CIOs or CAIs might be able to learn more and get their head around? Because what we're talking about, depending on what your service group is, I mean, you're talking about a fairly nice sized room of MBAs to be able to figure out the perfect ways and the tiering structures. It's
Yeah,
Is this
yeah.
something you help consult on at Thales, or would this be beyond y'all's scope?
So it is beyond the scope, right? From when it comes to the pure pricing and packaging, figuring out the value to metric to number, right? We typically work with a few companies there, right? One we typically work with Simon Kutcher, right? One of the fair ones in the business, I think. Not really a promotion for them, just saying we work with them.
Sure.
Myself, because I've sat in the rooms with the MBA so much, and I've solved this and I've owned the problem, right? I have some unique insight that from time to time, if it's a customer that has already agreed to do business with us, I'll help them based on my
Yeah.
experience. But from this pure consultation side, outside the scope, we like to stick on the side of, after this is defined, how do we action on that with technology to make sure you're implementing it in a very scalable way for the
Right
business.
on. You said something earlier when we were talking about the speed of change, right? And we've talked
Oof,
about
yeah.
maintenance, and we've talked about making sure that we have that built into a business model so that as an OEM or a provider of an AI platform, we don't end up taking it in the shorts, right? Because of being so successful, you don't want to be a victim of your own success. Um, but it seems like and while these are significant changes, especially in industrial and manufacturing environments, asking customers to consider new service agreement levels, contracts, and how we're going to
Hmm.
operate like that. It also seems to bring in this reoccurring relationship usage thing. Does it open the door for us to be more partners, for that AI platform provider to be more of a partner with a customer, which isn't just awesome PR, right? Our models are
Yeah.
constantly changing, so it seems like we can do 1 or 2 year iterations on a general manufacturing software platform or hardware platform and not be out of sync with the industry. In the AI space, those changes are happening daily, if not monthly, you know?
Yeah.
So it seems like this not only is a good way for AI service providers to organize themselves for revenue success and to limit liability, but also to be in constant communication. about how their models need to change, how their platform can improve to capture even more, or even lead to more ideas about how to segment those service offerings
Mhm.
to capture
Mhm.
larger markets. So, are there any other operational changes that you recommend to companies? Does that sounds like that resonates with you? Is there anything else that we kind of haven't
Oh
talked
yeah.
about?
No, so you're right. The operational change on the customer success side, right? You now need to think about how does your customer get and continue to be successful with your offer? Because and when you're in this field or this stage, your offer really begins to evolve to a platform, right? So exactly this, as you mentioned, begin to go from just a provider to a partner, right? You're a solution provider, but you're really partnering with your customer to ensure their success. So you have to think through now a few things, which they're not too different, right, of how many companies have done it
Yeah,
before. They've just relied on many integrators and other third parties to do it, and some of that you bring in house. But customer success, you really need to think through that. How successful are your
yeah,
customers? How are you getting feedback directly? I'm working with many companies now as they make this shift. They want to own the customer relationship. They're still relying on the channel and resellers to sell their
yeah,
offers, but they want to own the customer's relationship, right? So one of the big things we see here shift operationally is first helping the channel really being able to manage what we call the entitlement, the commercial access. I purchased the premium package. I should have the ability to use the premium features,
right,
right? So being able to allowing your channel to manage the initial onboarding, the initial entitlement and setup, right, of the offer. But of course, as you mentioned, there's ongoing things. There's a smaller SKU that may add additional value add on that individually your channel may not want to sell just the one small thing. But for you on the platform, selling one AI model on top creates more lock-in,
right,
right? So companies are looking at now how do they own the customer's relationship? So they need to understand not just what was sold, but who was it sold to? What's the current state of it? How much is it being used, right? And wanting to see that data typically into their CRM or close to where their sellers are. That's one of the operational changes, right? So two things there: customer success and renewals. You have to think through now, how do you manage renewals? Right? Do you have a renewal team? Is it the same salesperson that does both land and expand? That's for sure an operational piece. The big operational piece we didn't touch on, that's probably another two sessions by itself. It's how do you even comp this, right? If you're moving to a subscription
yeah,
side, what does that look like for your
right.
salespeople? How is it different from the first sale to renewal? Is that the same team? Right? So that there's a lot of nuanced topics that you have to think through from the operational side. SKUs, I mean, there's something even simple as SKUs. You need to have the right SKUs in your system that now rateable, right? Even with subscription, there's a portion of subscription that you can recognize upfront for the revenue, but the majority of it is rateable over time. And you need to define that between the difference in the maintenance and the value of the software, right? So I've owned that. I've sat in those rooms and banged my head with finance, figuring out the right percentages. So I understand all of those nuances, but there are operation changes in uh, finance, product, operations, and customer success.
I suspect the output of many of those meetings was a fragile truce. You got sales on one side, and
Yes,
you got
yes.
management.
Those are the things that make good friends, and you look back now on those stories, and you have a strong bond because of the big fights that you were in.
Because we didn't kill each other. Nothing brings you closer than
Exactly. Yeah.
beautiful.
Exactly.
All right, man. So I think we've talked a lot about how folks should think about the need to monetize their AI platforms, about
Yeah.
organizational changes, first steps forward. Is there one key takeaway that you want to leave our audience with about where we are today or where we're going?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, where this is exciting, I've seen this movie before, right, in other areas, and I get to leverage my compound expertise and helping and owning the problem in this new space, which has always been really exciting to me.
Right.
Uh, One, this is not going anywhere but up, right, and to the right. So there are really some key things that you have to think through. Modern monetization, as I call it, right? I mean, if you Google AI monetization is one of the top stories right now. If you're a company that has AI in your offer and you don't have an AI monetization and you're public, your stock will be punished, right? This is a board level conversation. So one of the key takeaways is you have to make sure that you have the right monetization infrastructure. What I mean by right is one that enables you to be flexible, right? Which is already a tenet that software defined automation is after anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And by flexible, I mean you want to be able to give your go-to-market teams the ability to change the pricing, change the packaging, change the offer
Yeah.
without having to call engineering, right? This is a very fluid time in the market. It's very early days. So you have the opportunity to gain a lot of market share by having this flex. Another key thing you want to look at is really how you protect your offers. If you have AI that you're deploying on the edge, you have to at least have the conversation of, how are we securing the model? How do we make
Yeah.
sure this model is going to deliver the same output as we trained it to do? Right? How do we make sure our training data is not manipulated? You want to make sure you have the appropriate conversations on protecting your AI software and model. That's just a protection for the integrity side. There's the IP side, right? You're investing in software. You're investing in AI for differentiation, for competitive reasons. You
Yeah.
want to make sure that it doesn't become a liability, right? You want it to be maintained as an asset, and protecting you does just that. Um, the honest consideration is really productizing. What are you productizing? Don't I've seen some companies who just try to jump on the bandwagon. Software, hey, we have software and slap a price on it. You have to first make sure that what you productize is really delivering real value that your customers are willing to pay for. Right? You don't want to have control layer things that they have to pay for, right? And it makes your device not usable. That's very annoying, and the other side of this sword is software defined is making it easier for switching. So if you get some of these things wrong, it becomes a little easier for your customers to switch, right? So you really
Sure.
do want to pay attention in how what you're productizing real value to the customers. Then the thing I'd say is, yeah, you really want to design for flexibility, right? Back to the question where I can't really give a definitive answer what's best for subscription or best for usage. It's changing, right? I think one of the exciting thing is there's a number of startups, a number of even incumbents that's moving to software only or having software organizations, and they roadmap out how long they can run software as a loss leader, right? So they're changing prices, changing packaging. To me, that's the need of the day, right? And I see that across not just manufacturing, but across everywhere. Salesforce, for example, in the past 5 months, past 18 to 19 months, they've changed their pricing about 4 to 5 times, right? Trying to figure out the right mix of usage and flat rate, because
And
that's what the
they're
market.
working
Yeah,
hard at
the
it
key
because
is
they're
to
still
make sure
struggling.
you design your monetization ability, and the main
Yeah.
flexibility is making sure you don't need your engineering team to manage entitlements and limits hard coding in the application.
Absolutely. Brilliant. All good advice, 100%. Maybe the next time we can talk about how customer data sets might be feeding back into models, or if there's any option there,
Yes,
because I'm sure that would be seems like that would be part of an SLA agreement. That would be in general,
absolutely.
give us the customers, how do customers feel about that? I mean, once upon a time, nothing went past the firewall. Well, that firewall crumbled about 12 years ago, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
So, are customers willing to be let their data be part of the enhanced solution set in general? We can go deeper in the
So,
future.
so yes, so we can go deep in the future, but some are. I don't know where the clear delineation is yet, but I've seen some that they're okay with some data sets being part of what can be trained to improve the model,
Right.
and for some customers it's a no-go, right? And that's where you still typically see the edge AI being deployed is running all locally. You need to figure out how to train and improve your data and send me the new model when you do it. But it's an area I'm looking at. But I've seen it both ways. I'm just
Yeah.
not fully clear yet what's the delineator where companies are okay, but some are. So, but I suspect as there's more AI, maybe with a bit more of regulatory touch as well, and people get a bit more comfortable,
Yeah.
um, I suspect we'll see more and more of it. But I still think there will always be a case where it's a no-go, right? Send me the model. I'm going to run it in my private cloud or on my physical premises.
Yeah. I would see that being the norm absolutely
Yeah,
today. And you're
yeah.
going to before you overcome those concerns on data protection and proprietary competitive advantage. I think our data handling and our regulatory environments and our reporting is going to have to evolve
Yes.
a good
Oh
long way
yes.
to
Oh
bring that level
yes.
of confidence from the customer, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, Dale, it's been brilliant speaking with you today. Again, I really appreciate the time. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm sure the audience has gotten a lot out of this, and this will not be the last time we will talk about this because
Yes, indeed.
AI doesn't just appear magically. And once you make it once, it never stops growing if you're going to continue to use it as a
Very
competitive
true.
advantage. So, for folks out in our audience, if you have any questions for Dale at Thales, I would encourage you to make sure you go to Thales.com. You can reach out to Dale directly on LinkedIn. If you've got a question for him, feel free to go to manufacturing-matters.com to see all of our past episodes. You can send us a question. We'll make sure we get it to Dale and get a quick answer for you. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining us today and look forward to
My pleasure.
getting with you soon and we'll talk more. And safe travels, Dale. It's been a pleasure, brother.
Yes, indeed. Thanks,
So
Win.